Hello, thank you everyone for joining. We're going to be starting in just a minute. Thank you everyone for joining. We're going to wait just another minute while people are coming in the door. Welcome everybody to the Long Live Women webinar on supporting women's heart health. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to wait just about one more minute and we'll get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today. My name is Jen Roberts. I'm the Vice President of Health Strategy with HealthHeart, and I'm joined by Dr. Jayne Morgan, our Vice President of Medical Affairs. Thank you, everyone. We have a great crowd today. So just a little bit of housekeeping. Any questions that you want to share, you can go ahead and put that in the Q&A section. We are going to have a poll that'll pop up that you'll be able to answer directly from your computer. But with that, let's go ahead and get started. So on our agenda today, we want to learn about women's heart health and the unique risks, learn some quick ways to care for your health and celebrate the women in your life, and then participate in a Q&A and ask all questions you wanted to know for Dr. Jayne Morgan and myself about Hello Heart and women's heart health. So with that, let's get started and wanted to talk a little bit about the culture around women's self-care. So the first thing we wanted to do is pop up a poll. So you guys should be able to answer this and respond to this question. I know I'm supposed to take care of my physical health, but sometimes it doesn't feel possible. So you can see the responses there. Is this super relatable? You never feel like this. Sometimes give everyone just a minute so they can go ahead and pop their answer in. Okay. Oh, Dr. Morgan, look at these responses. We're kind of split down the middle, but I would say about 75% definitely feel like this often to super relatable. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Let's continue to the discussion and see what people think.
And here's kind of a statement to really just reflect on. Even when I have time to spare, I usually feel too exhausted or guilty to spend it on myself. So how do you guys feel about this? Never. I feel like this super relatable, same kind of scale. Let's see what the audience has to say. Don't be shy. Go ahead and pop your number in there. Yeah, I think we're kind of spread across the board. I know I certainly feel like this sometimes that if I'm taking a little bit of a minute for myself, that certainly there's a million other things that I can be doing. I don't know how you feel about that, Dr. Morgan.
And I actually posted something about this recently, the guilt of taking a step away for a moment. So, I think this is real when we talk about how how we manage our health and how we manage the health of people around us.
Yeah, I think that's part of it is that it seems like as women, a lot of times there's a lot of other people that we're taking care of as well.
Mhm.
And not just yourself, but how can you actually help other women in your life and support them? Your mom, your sister, your aunt, best friends, coworkers. So really interested to hear how you guys feel about this. You never feel like this. It's super relatable, kind of somewhere in the middle if you want to answer the poll question here for us. Yeah, this is interesting. Well, the good news is for the 70% of people, we're going to definitely give you some tips on how you can support your own health and women that you love as well as part of this webinar.
Yeah. But it's interesting that that 40% of the people are right in the middle. Just, really, really not only not sure, not even sure how to answer the question, just
Yeah,
unsure. So we need information.
and we need to help each other.
Hmm.
So it's normalized for women to put others first, and I was wondering if Dr. Morgan, you could kind of go through some statistics for us.
It is normalized because that is really the culture in which we are brought up to give deference to authority, to give deference to adults, even deference to men. And I think that's part of the reason why it's very difficult even for us to advocate for ourselves when we put on a health lens or when we are in the physician's office or even in a medical facility or a hospital. But we've got to begin to peel back what is that normalization because it is part of the culture. It is how we communicate, men and women, with one another. And so that becomes even more of a challenge to address. But women actually do recognize the value in taking time for ourselves. What we often don't do is actually implement it. We don't act on it, but we actually do recognize the value of it. So that's when you see, these pop-ups of girlfriends trips and girlfriends night out, and people kind of realize that's what it's about. It's a woman's only. We don't want the men there. That's self-nurture. That's not, we're excluding people. That's, I need to take some time for myself and refill my tanks such that I can continue to fill the tanks of others.
Totally. And kind of some, we were talking about guilt earlier. Here's a really interesting statistic.
Yeah, well, and it's really, I think guilt is the main thing. Women, we keep a list of things in our brains, all the things we need to do, and constantly crossing things off the list. And I know at the end of the night, I think about things that I haven't gotten done, as opposed to I've tried to retrain myself to say, congratulate yourself for everything you actually got done. And so maybe our lists are just maybe overly ambitious. Maybe too many people are actually depending on us. I would say it doesn't necessarily I would say it does probably provide some anxiety and some guilt because what happens for me, I think I need to get up an hour or two earlier the next day so that I can complete what I didn't get done the previous day so that I can start the next day. And those are the kinds of things that are kind of snowball effects, and we need to take a moment to figure out what that is and how that actually impacts our health as well, especially our heart health. So I'm guilty as charged.
And
So
for all
maybe.
the parents out here, here's an interesting statistic.
So this is women with only one child. Just think about that. Say they find the time to spend total minutes throughout the day to care for themselves. With a second child, that goes to 4%. So that's just one child, only 8%. That's only 8%. That means the other 92% aren't finding 60 minutes, aren't finding 30 minutes, maybe aren't even finding a single second. And when we look at a lot of this data, we see that even in households with men and women where the work is equitably distributed, the household work is equitably distributed, it turns out when we take a deeper look at that men tend to have more of the responsibilities that are independent, that they can plan themselves. So, mowing the lawn and doing household repairs, those are independent chores. They don't involve other people and they can plan them around, say, their exercise time. As opposed to women, we tend to have more of the responsibilities of getting the meals, which means that's on someone else's schedule, getting the homework, someone else's schedule, and childcare, which is now on demand, and we're not able to actually plan that time. So even when household responsibilities are equitably split, when we take a closer look, we see that the men have those responsibilities that are independent, they can plan on their own, and women have the responsibilities that are dependent, others are dependent on them, and it's not their own schedules.
That's really insightful, and it's making me think maybe I should start mowing the lawn instead, if that makes
Right, exactly. Oops, are we frozen? Am I frozen? Am I frozen or is Jen frozen? Hmm.
Sorry about that. Is I'm coming through okay? Dr. Jane? There we are.
Okay, great.
Okay, fantastic. Well, technology. It's not fun unless we have a little hiccup here or there, right?
Right.
And I think what we were talking about was the prevalence and the number one cause of death in cardiovascular disease, Dr. Morgan.
Okay. Maybe if we can just pull up that slide. So the number one cause of heart disease, of death in women is actually heart disease. And we've never had a poll or a survey that showed that number at higher than 44% of people recognizing that heart disease is the number one killer of women. What do we usually think? The number one cause that most people answer is breast cancer for women. The number one cause for men, however, we correctly answer as being heart disease. And what's interesting or maybe disconcerting is that when we look 20 to 25 to 30 years ago, there was a greater recognition that heart disease is the number one killer of women 30 years ago than there is today. So that just goes to show you not really that our knowledge base is decreasing, but we are susceptible to PR and branding. And what has happened is there's been an increased recognition of breast cancer, fighting cervical cancer, and somehow we have forgotten about heart disease. We haven't done as good a job as cardiologists keeping heart disease at the forefront. And so actually a previous generation understood more to a greater degree that heart disease was the number one killer of women than we do today. Again, I want to be clear, breast cancer is important and cervical cancer is important, but I also want to be clear that the number one killer of women is actually heart disease. And in fact, when we look at the first heart attack of a woman, the first heart attack of a woman is more often fatal than the first heart attack of a man. And that is really for a number of reasons. One, we delay care for all of those reasons that Jen and I just discussed. We're doing things for other people. We're busy. We make excuses. We're guilty for taking time off. And so we may delay seeking medical care. And then also our symptoms may be different. And it's difficult for us to understand what those symptoms are through no fault of our own. We simply haven't been taught that we may not have chest pain. We may not have shortness of breath. We may just feel tired, or we may have back pain. And those things can be relatable to everyone. And so we see that women actually have a higher risk of heart disease, have twice the risk of heart attacks of men. And as we go through menopause, that risk also increases. And so it's not just breast cancer, it's all forms of cancer. So if you combine all cancers together, heart disease is still the number one killer of women. And when we talk about women of color, they're 30% are more likely to die from heart disease than non-Hispanic whites. And only 56% of women, this is a very high number, know that heart disease is their leading cause of death. The highest number I've really seen has been around 44%. So kudos to us. I think Hello Heart is actually making some inroads.
Well, we hope so. Let's talk about those risks in particular.
So when we look at the risk of heart disease, something that we try to make certain that people understand is that 80% of heart disease is preventable. There are only 20% of us who actually truly have congenital anomalies, familial or inherited diseases. The rest of us really is related to lifestyle choices, foods that we eat, the places that we live. And I recognize that sometimes those are not choices for us, where we live and the foods that we eat. But these are all the types of things that combine to increase our risk of heart disease, including stress, stressors on the body, which increase inflammation, that increases the risk of heart disease as well. And so Hello Heart is working to dial that back, to bend the arc on heart disease. That includes high blood pressure that's not being treated, cholesterol that's not being treated, poor sleep. Sleep is related directly to your level of heart disease. And so again, we come again to this delay in time. Why is women's risk of heart attacks greater than men? There's this delay in seeking medical attention. And then even once you seek medical attention, there may even be delay with the medical establishment in understanding your symptoms, recognizing that they are as serious as the man in the gurney next to you who's having the classic chest pain. And there may be a delay in getting you to the cath lab to get that artery open, to get oxygen infusing back to the heart. So when
And
we
then
think about menopause as
yeah.
well, as we go through menopause, perimenopause, that can start as early as 35 years of age. And when your estrogen levels begin to drop, it doesn't mean that you cannot get pregnant. So this is an interesting age, really, between 35 and 45. It doesn't mean that you can't get pregnant. It just means that your estrogen levels are decreasing. Your ability to get pregnant starts to decrease, but it doesn't mean that you can't get pregnant. Clearly, women are pregnant in their late 30s and early 40s, but this is the time for us from a cardiologist. I'm not so concerned about pregnancy. I'm concerned about the marching of the increased risk of heart disease during this time, and we don't really talk about it. And not only do we have these estrogen receptors in our heart that are protecting our heart as our estrogen levels drop, we have them on our arteries as well. And so what happens? Our arteries start to stiffen. They're not as compliant, they're not as pliable. And so our blood pressure goes up. Our cholesterol levels decrease. Cholesterol and estrogen share a common pathway in the liver. And then we kind of get this visceral fat, this fat around the midsection starts to set in, and we have increased weight. All of those things are independent risk factors for heart disease. And lucky us, they all happen at the same time during perimenopause and menopause. It's related to hormonal changes, and there is a risk of heart disease during this time. So what's important is all of those symptoms that you're having during perimenopause, the hot flashes, the night sweats, but some of these more subtle symptoms like a change in taste in your mouth or frozen shoulder or itchy ears, those are sort of not nothing. Those are indicators or markers of an increased risk of heart disease, and they should be taken seriously at your doctor's office, even if they are not necessarily uncomfortable to you. They should be uncomfortable to your doctor because they are indicators that your risk of heart disease is increasing, and she or he should be acting accordingly. And then when we talk about the women's heart attacks symptoms, the they may be different. Your symptoms may be more subtle. You may just feel as if you have a flu that you can't shake, or you may have nausea, or low grade back pain, or you may have pain in your right arm and not your left arm. So, all these things kind of make it more challenging. And also, the medical system is not trained to address those types of subtle, shall we say. And I really don't like to say subtle because the fact of the matter is women are more than 51% of the population. So maybe we're actually having the dominant symptoms and we just haven't the system is just not trained for us.
One thing I've noticed too, Dr. Morgan, like even with myself is maybe I might feel some of these symptoms, but I'll dismiss them. And even if I'm seeing a provider, I'm like, oh, but I was just very stressed that day, or I had a lot of stuff. So why are we doing that to ourselves?
We are. We're back to this culture of women nurturing others, putting ourselves last, dismissing symptoms in ourselves, but encouraging our family to go to the physician. But also, in our defense, a lot of these symptoms can be related to other things. You can have stomach discomfort, doesn't mean you're having a heart attack. You can have nausea, doesn't mean you're having a heart attack. You can have back pain, you can have neck pain. Think about that. You can have fatigue. So it can be related. You can easily relate them to a number of other things that you've been doing that day. So, in our defense, that is part of it as well.
Well, thank you for that. And when we think about disparities in health, the biggest disparity for women in health is actually heart health. And that is something that we can do. And this is something that Hello Heart can really support everybody who's on the call with today. Not only you're going to be able to have your daily check-ins, your risk is going to be personalized for you, and your coaching is being personalized. Like, where are you? Are you kind of in your 20s or 30s or 40s? Is menopause support something that you need as well? So if you don't have Hello Heart today, we're going to show you how to get it at the end of the call, but there is a little QR code here that you can use and you will get a monitor and an app with it. But there's kind of this sort of lifespan of different levels of risk for women. And I was wondering, Dr. Jayne, if you can share some stats and some of the features we have at Hello Heart related to that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the great things we have at Hello Heart is we're focused, as we also have a focus on women's health, that we have a focus on pregnancy. So we have a feature in our app where you can activate it if you become pregnant, and continue to receive support. And why is that important? It's important because hypertension during pregnancy actually increases your risk of heart disease, not only during your pregnancy, but after your pregnancy for the rest of your life. It is actually a marker of an increased risk for heart disease. And why do I say that? It means that in your volume overloaded state, your pregnant state, that you have failed your stress test. You've been unable to manage this volume. And like every failed stress test, you have to go on to higher cardiac care. We see this more often in Black women specifically who are born in the United States, not those who immigrate here, Native Americans, and Hispanic women. And once again, if you have a pregnancy, it's not only hypertension of pregnancy, it can be preeclampsia is a more severe form, certainly eclampsia or an older term called toxemia, but also gestational diabetes and even low birth weight babies are all markers for a long-term increased risk of heart disease. So after mom and baby are safe and the baby has been safely delivered, that patient, the mom, should go on to long-term care with a cardiologist. And ideally, a cardiologist should have been integrated into your maternal health team as soon as you developed high blood pressure again, because we know that's a marker now for heart disease, and you're going to need long-term supervision to have a nice, long, healthy life.
And what about, is this something that we should be asking for if we're at the doctor's office and they're telling you you have high blood pressure and you're pregnant? Should you be proactive and say, well, we have a specialist help, or is that something that's very standard right now?
Yeah, it is not standard, and you definitely should advocate and be proactive. And if you have been identified as having one of these pregnancies, and you may not recognize it as being serious, but generally you will have someone called a high risk OB person added to your team. That's your first indicator that it's serious. But the other person that should be added to your team that often, when I say often, almost never. Just working to get this done. It's still almost never is a cardiologist needs to be on your team. There needs to be a touch point, not a consultation, not a handoff, not I will give them a note, and if they want to see you, they can see you. That person needs to be part of your team and rounding and taking notes and making certain that they are observing you and managing you appropriately, especially your blood pressure.
That is really excellent advice. We advocate for everyone else in our lives, but not ourselves, and this is a critical time. And there's some quick and easy ways that we can kind of stack some habits on each other and really make an impact on cardiovascular disease. And one of the areas is nutrition. Um, Go ahead and you can kind of put this in the Q&A if this sounds relatable. You're great at buying produce, but end up haunted by the bag of spinach or greens in the back of your fridge. I have one right now. I thought about this when we were getting ready this morning, and I'm like, I have to figure out a way to put this in something that I'm eating today. So if you can relate to this, go ahead and drop that in the Q&A. And here's kind of some good ideas of things that can take your regular meal and really add some healthy content to it in terms of heart health. Oatmeal is great, but it's really easy to just throw in those few last berries that you have. You know, a few half strawberries that look like they've seen better days, and you grab the good parts of them. Apples, mangoes, like whatever it is that you like, and then add veggies to your eggs or different things that you're grilling. I found if I cut the greens, spinach, kale, whatever, super, super small, my kids don't notice. And it's not like overpowering, like, oh, we're gonna have a spinach salad. They're like, absolutely not, mom. But I will go ahead and mix it in some of these things. Like I did this the other night with the pasta. It just looked plain, like pasta is so easy to make. And I think such a common food for families today. And it's really easy to just open a jar of sauce and boil some pasta, but throw in a few different vegetable ends you have in there, throw in some greens that you've got. And another way to make those vegetables more palatable is to actually grill them. And this is funny because this is like the man's domain. Wouldn't you say, Jane, on the grill?
Right.
So we could flip that script. Maybe we're going outside and they're kind of getting the rest of the food ready and we're outside doing the grilling.
Right.
But also something fun that, it can be sort of like a social activity, and different people kind of around and hanging outside when the weather's nice. So all of these are different dimensions of wellness, both mental and physical, that can help us improve our lifestyles. And so this is a go-to recipe that I actually use. It's just 2 cups of unsweetened peaches because we don't need the extra sugar in there. If you've got it in a can, you can rinse them off if you'd like to. 2 cups of spinach. I make sure they're super, super fine before I put them in the blender. Blueberries, it could be whatever kind of berries or different fruits you have around. Fat-free milk, or you could use like coconut milk or almond milk or something like that, and then a teaspoon of honey. If you're in a real hurry, Costco has this already made in individual size servings. They're about $1 each. So if it's just me, I just make one, and if it's multiple kids I'm making it for, then we'll have that going as well. So something to think about if you can kind of incorporate smoothies into your lifestyle. It's a really good option. And Jane, Dr. Morgan, I know you have a Pilates studio.
Mm.
And I'm baffled because you're a cardiologist, you're on TV all the time, and you're running a studio. Tell us a little, why are you doing that? I know it's not just for your own health.
So I have about 17 certifications in Pilates, which is a lot. So I am certified in 3 different schools. So we have Balanced Body, we have Power Pilates, and Reformation, and also tons of equipment, the tower, the Cadillac, the reformer, the chair. And I really started it as a hobby, not, I just liked it. So I was doing it and I started hanging out with the teachers. I have a big ballet background. And I started to gather certifications, no intention of teaching. I just did it because it was fun. I was hanging out with the Pilates teachers. But my day job was a cardiologist. Over time, because I was hanging out with them and training with them, the teachers would start to ask me to come and sub some of their classes when they were out. And so over time, I kind of built my own school. And during COVID, I opened a virtual school, really just to keep people moving. I was always teaching, but I moved my students to a virtual school during COVID just to keep people moving. And it was only going to be 6 weeks, if you guys remember. And I just wanted to keep them moving during that 6 weeks. And here we are 5 years later. I still have school. People tend to like coming virtually. Those who didn't, they went back to the gyms. Those who do still come virtually. So it's really good for core strength. It's very good for maintaining muscle mass as we age, which is important as our estrogen levels drop. And that's important. Remember, our heart is also muscle for maintaining all of that muscle mass. So thanks for asking, Jen. That was great.
Yeah, and I aspire to be you one day, Dr. Morgan. That sounds like a lot that you've got going on there. But one thing I like to do is to really stack up small activities on top of each other because these are things that most people can do most of the time. Like even if you're not in the greatest physical shape. Here this is from the American Heart Association. A little chagrined that they're all about cleaning, but we all probably do enough cleaning. So
Right.
you can actually burn calories doing laundry, vacuuming, washing windows. I do not recommend the gutters, but
Right.
and I'm pretty sure when I tried to do it that one time, I burned way more calories than that and almost broke my neck. But just think these little things can stack up. You don't have to say, I'm going to join a gym and I'm going to go 3 days a week or 4 days a week, or I'm going to get a personal trainer and going to make all this investment. It can really be these small things can make a big difference over time.
Yeah.
And one thing I always like to recommend is really to just engage your core, and that's something we can all do while we're sitting here right now. So if you think of your abdominals and your obliques, I always think of it like pretend that you just got punched in the stomach, and it really tightens up that core right there. And then you can do the same thing with your lower back and your glutes by squeezing. This is hard to hold this pose. You will burn calories just doing this pose, engaging your core sitting. You could be driving, you could be in the carpool line, you could be at the pharmacy, you could be sitting in your office, and you can do this and no one knows you're doing it. And not only is it burning calories, it's really more about strength, strengthening your core, and then allowing you to kind of expand on some of those activities in the future. So
Yeah,
a couple.
that was a great slide. If you notice on the slide that the person there has a slight scoliosis as well, and so those engaging your core will help to straighten that. And planking is also another way to engage all of these exact muscles that Jen is talking about. So planking on your forearms and your legs extended is another way to engage your core, keeping it lifted off of the mat. So
And
you can
we'll
see she
show
has a
an example.
slight scoliosis, and these exercises that Jen is going over can help her to self-correct.
You know what's funny? I don't think that the model knew that, Dr. Morgan. We should maybe note. But again, some simple exercises. Standing while activating your core can burn 10 to 20 calories in as little as 5 minutes, but more importantly, improving your posture and your core strength, because that can help you avoid injuries in the future. Just the back pain, the kind of sleeping funny. If you can build up your core, it makes a big impact. And I love this Wonder Woman pose. I don't know if you've heard of it before, but it has shown that not only is it activating your core, but it's improving kind of your outlook. So what you do is you strike a Wonder Woman pose while activating your core for 30 seconds. Often if you could do it in the mirror, but maybe it's right before you go into a big meeting with your boss, or you're like, oh, I've got to go in and get X, Y, and Z done that I'm really not looking forward to. It can just give you that kind of boost of confidence a little bit. You're feeling it physically, and then just kind of give you the confidence to go forward and do what you need to do. And then here's a really good example. This is a bird dog, but you really can start out in a plank position. So for this exercise, you can progress it over time. You could start with both of your knees on the ground, and then just lift one arm. and then put that down and lift the other arm. And once you feel that, now remember, you're activating your core the whole time. And once you start to feel a little bit stronger with that, then maybe you can try the opposite arm, opposite leg, which is what you see her doing here. And really, these type Pilates is just such a great lifetime physical activity. I mean, it's something that people can do at all stages of their life, and you can just escalate it up a little or drop it down a little, depending on what your physical ailments are and different things like that. Or maybe you have specific fitness goals that you're looking for, so you want to really elevate that with some more cardio kind of folded into it. But I think the thing is to find something you love, right, Dr. Morgan?
Absolutely. Find something you love and then you do that. I do Pilates. It doesn't have to be what you do. I'm also a walker. I walk and I hike. Find something that speaks to you or something that you like. Anything that you like doesn't have to fit into a nice square box, and do that activity. The point is to move. We want you to have good movement.
Well, I thoroughly embarrassed myself playing pickleball for the first time, but I did not give up. And another piece that we've kind of talked about our physical health with both exercise, nutrition, but mental health is important, and all of those dimensions of wellness relate and influence each other. So we wanted to do kind of some exercises here. This is a gratitude journal, which I think probably a lot of people have heard of before. Dr. Jayne Morgan, you do things like this before, right? And can you talk a little bit about kind of what's going on in your body, your chemicals when you're doing things like this?
Yeah, you have a moment to sort of rest. And so that adrenaline starts to go down. Adrenaline is revved up, your epinephrine is revved up during the day. That also promotes those inflammatory responses. So you have a time to sort of sit down again. This is this introspection and focus on yourself. And you find those chemical modulators start to decrease and some of the better endorphins start to take over. Those endorphins, meaning those things, those types of chemicals that make us feel good that we've pushed down all day to keep going, those start to come into play. And a great practice is this gratitude practice.
So you can write down three things you're grateful for, relive an experience from some point in your life, write a self-appreciation journal. One thing that I think my mom sort of started on accident with our family is, you know how you get Facebook memories? So she'll text us, once or twice a week with like a 10-year-old picture or 8-year-old picture and like tells a story about it. And then we all think about it. So it's kind of like a virtual way to do this. So think about that. It could just be a funny picture or even a meme, but I want to walk you through an actual example. So if everybody will just indulge me for a second, we'll do a guided meditation. So we can close our eyes and we can slowly take deep breaths in and out. And I want you to think of a place in nature where you feel happy, where you feel calm. It could be a beach, it could be a park, it could be a forest, whatever it is that gives you that calm, happy feeling. And then ask yourself, what do you feel right now? What colors do you see around you? What other things do you see? What can you hear? What can you smell? And take a deep breath in and out and kind of come back to the webinar and just try to think of that place that your mind like immediately went to, and just really think about all of the tangible things. Think of your five senses and how they get activated in that environment. So when you're having a really rough time or a stressful time, we did this in 30 seconds. Do you feel better, Dr. Morgan?
I do. I feel much more centered.
Fantastic. So we want to make sure that not only are you helping yourself out and being your own best advocate for your heart health, but also support and celebrate the women in your life. So here's some
Mhm,
examples, Dr. Morgan, if you can walk us through them.
mhm. Make a heart healthy dinner or breakfast in bed. Make space for free time. That's a hard one. take something off of her to-do list. That's
It's-
that's that's me. I have the running list of things all the time.
I asked for one thing for Mother's Day, and I said, "Can you please just clean the kitchen, kids?" Like that's it. I don't want anything. I just want the kitchen cleaned.
Send a thank you note. There's a lot being said now for handwritten thank yous, especially in developing relationships and keeping relationships. So, it used to be something that our parents and grandparents did frequently. We've gotten out of the habit of that. So, send a thank you note. Plan a fun activity. And again, for women, what you think is fun, not what your family thinks is fun and you put up with it, what your kids think is fun and you've got to manage it. Plan a fun activity that you like
Good call there.
and try out a new class together. And it doesn't have to be with your partner, it can be with a female friend. Try out a new class of something where you're with someone else. Community is really important. And what we've seen in research is that women who have strong communities of other women actually have longer lives than women who do not have communities of other women. So if you try out that new class together, it doesn't have to be with your partner or spouse, it can actually be with your bestie.
And sometimes you can make friends in those classes, and
That's
then you
right.
got that interest in there. And to your point of having friendships helps improve your health for women. I think we get so isolated in our work bubble and our family bubble that sometimes those relationships go to the wayside, and we really need them.
Mhm.
And here's one of the things I wanted to make sure everybody who's on the webinar today kind of understands. If you have Hello Heart right now, there might be some features that you're not using. And if you don't have Hello Heart, we're going to show you how. So you get a monitor and then you get a complimentary app that goes with it. Everything from the monitor is going to go directly in the app, and you're able to track all those really important heart health features like blood pressure, physical activity, medication, cholesterol in there, but also detecting any irregularities in blood pressure and pulse. And this is critical because, to Dr. Morgan's point about women being at higher risk because symptoms aren't recognized, if you actually have that information and you share that report with your physician, which you can do directly from the Hello Heart app, now they have more data to look at, instead of just that one blood pressure and time, when you went in there. And kind of taking all of that information together is going to create this customized digital coaching program using AI. So you don't have to call anyone or answer the phone or anything like that. It's on demand whenever you're ready. Every new blood pressure reading that goes in there, every single day, you're going to get new content, kind of like an Instagram or a Facebook feed. I'm trying to find the things that you like. Is it nutrition? Is it some meditation? Is it a cool recipe or some physical activity to try, or even kind of some stress busting ideas? So definitely check those out and try out all the different features, and just know that within the program, they know your the age and they know if you're a female. So your risks and symptoms when you're reporting them are going to be related specifically to you, to your age and your gender. So you get the right information at the right time. And I wanted to just bring it back home and say, don't forget to check your blood pressure daily. Look at your personalized health education that you're getting. And if you're in either the menopause, perimenopause, you're not sure age, try that feature out. And if you happen to be pregnant at some point while you have Hello Heart, definitely be using the Hello Heart app to track your blood pressure and send those results to your doctor. It's super easy if you're new to Hello Heart to enroll. There's a QR code, and you kind of turn on your camera on your phone and make it big enough, and the little pop-up should come up for you, or you can visit joinhelloheart.com, and then you'll download the app, and it's a really simple login. If you get stuck, don't feel bad. We've got a great support team. They're our own employees here based across the US, Monday through Friday, 8 to 8. They'll walk you through any technical issues that you're having, or you can email them at support@helloheart.com. And I will say, Dr. Morgan, we have a ton of questions today.
Okay, let's get to
So
them.
if we want to go ahead and get to some questions, thank you everyone who sent them in advance, and thank you who sent them during the meeting. So I've got a list right here. I think this is a good one. We kind of got this in some different variations. What is the most important thing women over 50 can do to protect their heart health? Like, if there's only one thing, what should I be doing?
If there's only one thing, well, oh boy, I don't know. I don't know if there's one thing. So, risk factors are important. And so, make certain that your blood pressure is treated to goal. And that means 120 over 80 or less. And you may not recognize that your blood pressure has elevated. You may have gone your whole life and your blood pressure is normal. You don't even have to think about it. You know it's normal or even low, and you haven't checked it as you're going through perimenopause. You may be surprised that it has been elevated and you haven't had any symptoms. So if you find that you're going through perimenopause and your blood pressure is elevated, make certain that you take it seriously. You don't say, oh, there must be something wrong with me. I never have high blood pressure. Well, now you do, and it's not really an anomaly. It is true. It's because those arteries are stiffening, and you will be prescribed medication, and you should take that medication. Do not kid yourself. I want you to take your medication, and make certain that your blood pressure is down to goal. Whether your blood pressure is 120 over 80 without meds or with meds, I don't really care as long as it's 120 over 80. So I want you to be on medications as opposed to having your blood pressure at 140 or 150 and you not take medications because you think it's an anomaly. So take it seriously.
All right,
I
120
could
over.
pick 20 things. I picked that
Yeah.
one,
I
but
think that's a fair question. We got it in a bunch of different ways. Like, what's one thing I could do today? Take your blood pressure and try to get it to 120 over 80. And then this is kind of a follow-up to that. What are things I can do to naturally lower my blood pressure?
Okay, so now we're talking about lifestyle things. So all the things that Jen and I were talking about, try to get out there and move for 30 minutes a day. You don't have to kill yourself. You don't have to train for a triathlon. Pick an activity that you like, something that involves movement, and do it for 30 minutes a day, no matter how quirky or offbeat it may seem to other people. The point of the matter is to move. Our bodies were made to move, and just like a car that sits in the garage for a long time, after a while, it starts to break down. So you've got to really start to move. It doesn't matter what you're doing. And for women, as we go through midlife, I want you to think less about losing weight and more about being strong. Think less about being thin and think more about being strong. So add some type of weights to what you're doing. Okay, they can be light weights to give you some resistance so you can fight against bone loss. You can fight against muscle mass loss. Pilates, I like Pilates. I'm not pushing Pilates, but Pilates also offers resistance because that is the point of it. The gravity, using your body as resistance as you hold and go through these positions to maintain your muscle mass, right? Because that decreases your risk of falls, injuries, and improves your health and quality of life.
We've got a few questions kind of related to hormones and its role in heart health. But there is a question in here about hormone replacement therapy. I know you and I have talked about this
Mhm.
ourselves personally. What would you share with everybody on the call today about that?
Yeah, that's definitely worth a conversation with your physician about hormone replacement therapy. So that's estrogen, progesterone, and also testosterone. Women probably don't realize we actually make more testosterone in our ovaries than we do estrogen. And testosterone is also key to that whole hormonal milieu of feeling yourself, of feeling well. And so these are conversations that you should definitely have with your physician. It's not hormone replacement therapy is not right for everyone, or it might be recommended to you, and your personal choice is not to do it. But you should have the privilege and the autonomy of having that conversation and making a decision about whether or not you would like to move forward with hormones, even if it's a short while to control some of your symptoms, those vasomotor symptoms, or long term, where we're looking at more heart protection as well.
Are there any supplements, vitamins, or dietary changes you could recommend for women to improve heart health, especially during menopause?
Yeah, one of the key vitamins, I think sometimes people ask me, I think I saw in the Q&A about what blood work should I get? So when we
Mhm.
talk about vitamins, vitamin D is important. Oftentimes our vitamin D levels are very low and we don't recognize that. That's a risk factor for heart disease. And then you may want to also add some magnesium because that helps with the absorption of vitamin D. And so again, what are we doing? We're trying to preserve our heart health and our heart mass. So those are, I would say those are probably two that I would think about. Others, that you can think about one way or another would be the fish oils, omega-3 fatty acids. Um, that might be another one that you would add. And I want to be clear, as a cardiologist, I want to make certain that I'm giving a disclaimer. I am not giving anyone medical advice. We're here on a webinar and I'm just providing information. This is not direct medical advice to anyone.
Well, you really sparked my interest when you talked about how men and women's chores around the house are different,
Mhm.
solo versus dependent on multiple other people. So we got several questions saying, how do you shift household responsibilities and chores to the spouse? Asking for general advice.
Right. Yes, we need a counselor because men know that, right? As soon as the kids start going berserk, right? That's the moment that they think is a great time to mow the lawn. So you're thinking they're being helpful, and really they've escaped. So they recognize that they've left you there, and you think, oh, they're being helpful. They're not. They actually are doing self-preservation. And we've got to learn what self-preservation is as well. And so cannot tell you how to navigate your relationships, individual relationships. Mowing the lawn's not fun. Doing the household repairs are not fun, but it does give you independent time and you can plan it around your other activities. And it's one of the reasons why men, especially at midlife, get an hour more exercise a day than women even when they are in split chore households, because men are able to plan their housework around their exercise and they can continue to exercise. And women, at a time when we need to exercise more, we pull back and exercise less because we're more overwhelmed by our responsibilities. And long term, that means what? More debilitating symptoms. Women live longer. We live longer, but in poorer states of health. 6 years longer, but in poorer states of health. We have more physical deterioration, muscle mass loss. All of that, men maintain it for much longer. They do have higher levels of testosterone, but they also are exercising more and they have the time to do it.
Well, I don't know if everyone who's on the webinar travel a lot or have been in planes and they tell you to put on your oxygen mask first before you help your kids or maybe your spouse who's not sure how to do it. And so that's one thing that I've started to do. I don't know if this is advice. I'll just say, I need to put on my oxygen mask, and I literally will
Right.
walk away from something that's being asked of me. And then everybody in the house knows, like, mom needs a moment. We'll give her a little bit of a moment. But with that, we wanted to also think about other women and how you can lead the way for other women and support women. So for Women's Heart Health Month, do something for your health and post it online using the hashtag Long Live Women. This can be Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever is your go-to. You can make a video on TikTok. I'm not there yet, Dr. Morgan. I know you're out there doing that. Not quite on TikTok. But
Yeah.
inspire other women in your network to take care of themselves. And also follow the Hello Heart app on Instagram. We've got some great content all month long on women's health. And kind of with that, like, any closing remarks, Dr. Morgan?
Yeah, I would say social media is a great place to find your community and move forward. Not only Hello Heart, I'm going to say you can follow me as well for health information. I'm at Dr. Jayne Morgan, DrJayneMorgan. That's not my Pilates page. That's my heart health page. That's my health. I talk a lot about menopause, a lot about women. But you can find communities in social media. I was just on a webinar this morning talking about how social media allows you to find the communities that can keep you going, give you information, provide that sort of convening that sometimes we need. And so, I don't know how you feel about social media one way or another, but there are some positives. There are certainly a lot of negatives. There's a lot of misinformation, and you can, get sucked into rabbit holes. But there actually are some positives as well. And there are a lot of positive people who can follow you, give you really good information, model lives, and help you reach your goals.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Morgan. And thank you everyone who joined us today. Like, what a huge crowd. And I know that that means that that Long Live Women hashtag is going to keep spreading around. And we're really grateful. Again, if you've got any questions, you can reach out at thehelloheart.com, the support line, click the QR code. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.